Hey there. Welcome to our little background piece on our episode for the Manna Machine. We realize this is something that we've referred to a lot, and people probably are like, what the heck is the Manna Machine? This is something that not a lot of people have heard of. So we thought that having a short little video that you could watch at your leisure, either before or after the episode, it's all up to you, would be helpful in establishing a little bit of what we're talking about, so that you can follow along during the episode. So it all stems from a book, The Manna Machine. This was written by Rodney Dale and George Sassoon in the 1970s. It quickly went out of print, so close to 20 years ago, I paid a few $100s to get this copy. It's worth quite a bit more than that now, so it's very cherished. But anyway, it describes a machine that was given to the Israelites to produce manna, their food, when they spent that 40 years in the wilderness, wandering through the desert or whatever. There's slight mentions of this in the Bible. King James Version, Exodus 16, I think, has a mention of the manna tasted like wafers and looked like white coriander seeds. So that's just kind of what we've envisioned the manna as. It was also described as kind of like a dew that they would pick up off the ground and stuff like that. But the Manna Machine, specifically this book, and another book that kind of goes with it, the Kabbalah Decoded, it goes back to the Jewish texts that the Old Testament was formed from, but there are some books that were left out when Christianity decided to kind of co-opt that as their Old Testament. And these texts that were left out may have been left out because they were probably a little dry and boring, as they weren't so much telling a story as it was kind of like a service manual. It was describing something in body parts, mind you, brains and hair, a penis that the manna came out of, things like that. But, the Apache tribe, when they first saw cars, they called headlights eyes, and I think the radiator was lungs or something. If you don't have words in your vocabulary to describe some kind of technology that you've never seen before, you're just going to go for an analogy, right? So basically, anyway, there's 3 books that made up the Zohar, which is what this all came from. Book of Concealed Mystery, Lesser Holy Assembly, and the Greater Holy Assembly. So these 3 books effectively have this service manual type description of how this thing works, how it's maintained, and how it should be handled, because handling it was actually kind of dangerous, which led these 2 authors, who were effectively just translating a series of translations and putting it in more modern terms that we can understand with today's knowledge. Anyway, what it was describing was probably indicative of something that was radioactive in nature, possibly a nuclear style power source, one that, if handled improperly, would cause radiation sickness, hair falling out. In Exodus chapter 19, verses 16 through 20, God is described as descending on Mount Sinai upon fire, with smoke all around, and the mountain quaked. Now, heaven once referred to the stars, what we know as the sky and space. Ancient of Days, which is what this, let's say, machine is referred to as, the Ancient of Days was once thought to refer to God. It might have actually just been a contemporary explanation of this machine, which was housed in the Ark of the Covenant, which most people have heard of, especially if you've seen Indiana Jones. The Ark of the Covenant was actually kind of what carried this thing, because like I said, your exposure to it could be dangerous. So you had to rest it on this thing, which had poles through it so that you could carry it kind of like a casket almost. You'd have pallbearers basically for this Ark of the Covenant, which carried the Ancient of Days, which was not in fact God, but this machine, which was given to the Israelites by whomever or whatever, descended on fire on Mount Sinai. That's effectively some of the background. The book goes into all these descriptions about locks in the beard, and each beard had coming from the brain of its head, which was probably gas exchange piping, with 31 even locks, each having 390 hairs in each lock. So who sits there and counts all that hair? I mean, this must have been explained to them like in their maintenance rituals or whatever. So the Zohar was written in about 1290, which means this was passed down word of mouth, generation to generation. The Zohar then was maybe like retranslated around the 1500s and the 1600s, up into the 1870s when a book called Kabbalah Denudata, which denuding, unveiling, exposing, basically it was written as kind of a translation in modern times of the 19th century. And then in 1978, the Manna Machine thus translated the Kabbalah Unveiled and wrote the Manna Machine and the Kabbalah Decoded in terms that we could understand in the late 70s, which isn't all that different from today, mind you. So effectively what this machine sounds like to me as a biologist is a fermentation. It's a tank that you could put in this case algae like chlorella in this tank, and it would produce a byproduct which was very densely packed with nutrients and calories, so much so that one family effectively got about a gallon a day to share amongst themselves. And that's pretty astounding. And what would be really cool about looking into this is to see if not only if you could find the thing to just prove that it actually was, something that was a full-on machine, like however it was powered, nuclear power, whatever that is, 2,000 years ago or whatever. That would be amazing. But even more amazing than that would be to like reverse engineer it and fix world hunger. So that's why this is so cool to look at and to entertain the idea of it. It's a little out there, sure. Thinking aliens were mistaken for God. They gave us this really cool machine to feed us in the desert. You can make up your own mind, but it is a really good read. It makes a really strong argument. The Kabbalah Decoded, it's a little dry, but it basically goes through the whole translation process. So you can see they give you all these alternate words, because there's a word that could be described as this or that, and they make sure to show you the 2, 3, or 4 words that it could be interpreted as. And you'll see in some cases the Bible chose to go with one thing when something else may have made more sense. So that's a little bit of the background. If you've got a lot of cash lying around and you want to go find this book on eBay or Amazon or whatever, I recommend it. Kabbalah Decoded is maybe a little cheaper, but not as interesting. So we hope you enjoy the episode on the Manna Machine.